The battlefield was silent, except for the soft hiss of burning metal and the occasional crack of distant explosions. Smoke rose in gray clouds, carrying the stench of scorched earth and blood. Broken ships and shattered armor lay scattered across the ground. Bodies of both humans and aliens were strewn everywhere, frozen in the last moments of life. Kale, an alien warrior, lay on his side, barely able to move. His blue skin was scorched and torn in several places. His armor, once strong and shiny, was dented and cracked. Pain shot through his body every time he tried to move his legs. Nothing happened. He was paralyzed. He could not stand. He could not run. He could only watch the chaos around him. He had fought bravely, as he always did. KL had faced enemies larger than him, faster than him, and he had never run. But now, lying helpless on the ground, he felt something he had never felt before: fear. Not fear of death, but fear of being forgotten. The other warriors had either been killed or had fled. No one was coming back for him. Kyle tried to call out, his voice raspy and broken from pain. "Help! Someone!" He coughed, blood tasting bitter in his mouth. The wind carried his words away. The battlefield was empty. Nothing answered him. He felt the weight of hopelessness pressing on his chest. His mind flashed through memories, training with his fellow soldiers, victories in smaller skirmishes, the honor of his people. And now, all of that seemed useless. A sound in the distance made him lift his head slightly. A human figure moved slowly across the battlefield. Kale squinted. The human was small compared to him, dressed in gray armor, carrying a rifle. His movements were careful, slow, almost cautious. Kale felt a strange mix of hope and disbelief. Humans were not known for helping aliens. Most saw him as a dangerous creature to kill. The human approached closer. Kale noticed something about the way he moved, not fear, not aggression, but attention. The human was looking at him, not running, not hiding. That made Kale suspicious. Why would a human care? He whispered to himself. But he could not speak louder. His throat was dry, and his voice weak. The human stopped a few meters away. He lowered his weapon slightly, scanning the area. Then he knelt beside Kale. The alien watched him carefully, every muscle tense. He had learned long ago that strangers were not to be trusted. The human reached down, placing a hand on Kale's shoulder. Kale flinched. The touch was gentle, careful, and surprisingly firm at the same time. "Can you move?" the human asked in a calm voice. He sounded different from other humans Kale had met. There was no fear in his voice, no hate, just a question. Kyle tried to respond, but no words came out. His body would not obey. The human nodded, as if he understood. He looked around quickly, checking the battlefield, then gently lifted Kale's upper body. The alien's heart raced. He had not expected anyone to try to help him, let alone lift him. "Hold still, I'll get you out of here," the human said. He moved carefully, adjusting Kale on a makeshift stretcher he seemed to have prepared quickly from torn pieces of fabric and metal. The alien's eyes widened. The human was strong, far stronger than he appeared. Kale's mind raced. Was this a trick? Some trap? Or was this human different? He had learned to judge enemies quickly. This one did not move like an enemy. He moved with purpose, but without anger. That confused Kale. He had never seen a human act this way toward an alien, especially in the middle of a war zone. They moved slowly. Ethan Kale learned the human's name from the tag on his armor, guiding the stretcher over jagged ground. Kale's body jolted with every step. Pain flared through his chest and arms. He gritted his teeth, but could not speak. The human noticed. "Easy. Easy," Ethan whispered, adjusting Kale's position. Suddenly, A whirring sound filled the air. Enemy drones hovered above, scanning the ground. Kale's eyes widened in alarm. He had seen drones before, small, fast, deadly. They would attack anything moving. Ethan did not panic. He ducked behind a broken wall and pulled Kale down with him. The drones scanned the area, then zoomed past, unaware of them for now. Kale watched the human calmly assess the situation. He set the stretcher down and whispered, "We need to move when they are distracted." Kale could only nod slightly. His pride as a warrior burned inside him. He hated that he had to be helped, but he had no choice. If he stayed, he would die. And maybe, just maybe, this human could keep him alive. Hours passed slowly. The battlefield seemed endless, a maze of broken metal, scorched earth, and silence. Ethan carried Kale when the ground was too rough. When the ground was flatter, he pushed the stretcher, adjusting it to avoid jolting Kale too much. Every time Kale felt pain, Ethan would pause and whisper instructions, carefully moving him to minimize suffering. Kale started noticing other things. The human never complained. His face was streaked with dirt and sweat, but his eyes never lost focus. Ethan seemed to know exactly what to do in every situation. Kale's respect for humans, already faint, began to grow. They were fragile, yes, but in moments like this, they could be incredibly brave. As night fell, the temperature dropped. Kale shivered under the thin fabric Ethan had wrapped around him. Stars shone in the sky, unfamiliar constellations stretching across the alien horizon. Kale had fought in many battles, but he had never had time to notice the stars. He felt a strange calm. For the first time since the battle, he did not feel completely alone. Ethan stopped near a crater filled with debris and set up a small shelter. He used broken metal panels and scraps of fabric to shield them from the cold wind. Kale watched silently as the human worked, his hands quick but precise. Then Ethan sat down next to him, taking a small container of water from his pack. "You need to drink," Ethan said. He carefully lifted Kale's head and let him sip slowly. Kale was surprised. Humans were smaller than him, yet this one managed to care for him with skill and patience. Kale tried to speak, but only a weak sound came out. Ethan smiled faintly. "Don't worry, you'll talk when you can. Just rest now." Hours passed. Kale lay there, feeling the weight of his own body and the pain from his injuries. But beneath it, he felt something unfamiliar, hope. He realized that even in the middle of destruction, there could be kindness. Even a human could act with courage and compassion, without expecting anything in return. Kale closed his eyes, feeling exhaustion pull him under. He thought about what had happened in the battle, about his people leaving him behind, about the humans he had seen fight alongside others. And then he thought about Ethan. This human had risked everything to save him. He did not fully understand why. Perhaps it was bravery. Perhaps it was duty. Or perhaps it was something simpler. Something that Kale had rarely experienced in his long life. Empathy. As he drifted toward sleep, Kale felt a spark of determination deep inside. He would survive. He would move again. And when he did, he would remember this human, not just as a soldier, but as someone who had shown him what humans could be when they acted without fear or hate. The night was quiet, except for the distant echoes of the battlefield. But for Kale, lying in the makeshift shelter, it was the first night he had felt safe. He had been left to die, paralyzed and hopeless. Yet here, with a human soldier beside him, he was alive. And that small difference, he realized, could change everything. The sun rose slowly over the scarred battlefield, casting an orange glow over the twisted metal and blackened soil. Kale woke to the soft sound of wind moving through broken structures. He blinked, feeling stiff and sore from lying in the makeshift shelter all night. The pain in his legs was still sharp, but somehow less unbearable than yesterday. He looked to the side and saw Ethan sitting quietly, checking the contents of his pack. Ethan looked up and smiled when he noticed Cale awake. "Morning," he said simply. "You slept okay?" Cale tried to nod, but realized it hurt more than he expected. Ethan noticed and quickly moved closer, steadying him. "Take it slow," Ethan said. "We need to get you moving today. But carefully." Cale had been left paralyzed and abandoned. He had expected death, or at least indifference. But here was a human, acting as if his life mattered. Cale felt a strange gratitude and a flicker of trust, even though he did not fully understand it yet. Ethan began assessing Cale's injuries. He moved Cale's arms gently, checking for broken bones and bruises. Then, he looked at his legs. "You can't move them yet, but that's okay," he said. "We'll work on it slowly. You'll get strength back. Maybe not today, but soon." Cale wanted to speak, to say that he did not need help, that he could survive alone. But the words stuck in his throat. His pride burned. But deep down, he knew that this human was the only chance he had. Ethan stood up and stretched. "We should get moving. Staying here is too dangerous. Enemy patrols could come back any time." Cale tried to roll onto his stomach, but his body resisted. He let out a frustrated growl. Ethan moved closer again, carefully lifting him into a sitting position on the stretcher. "I know it hurts," Ethan said softly, "but we can do this together." The human lifted the stretcher, supporting Cale's weight with surprising strength. They moved slowly across the battlefield, weaving through wreckage and avoiding the burned-out shells of ships. Cale's eyes scanned the area. He noticed smoke rising from the edges of the field. There were signs of a recent battle, and the ground shook faintly under distant explosions. Ethan paused suddenly and lowered the stretcher behind a large piece of twisted metal. Cale's heart raced. "What is it?" he whispered. "Drones," Ethan replied quietly. "Enemy patrols are returning. Stay still." Cale watched as small mechanical drones hovered above the battlefield. Their sensors scanned the area, whirring quietly. Cale tensed. He had fought drones before, and they were deadly. But Ethan stayed calm. He peeked around the metal, then gestured for Cale to stay low. When the drones passed, Ethan moved again. Slowly, carefully, he guided Cale over uneven ground. Cale realized something. This human was not just brave. He was smart. He could think quickly and act without panic. Cale's respect grew quietly, like a fire starting in the darkness. By midday, they reached a small grove of broken trees and rocks. It was not much, but it offered cover from the open battlefield. Ethan set the stretcher down and pulled out a small water container. "Drink," he said. Cale hesitated, but then took a few sips. The water was cool and clean, and it soothed his parched throat. "Thanks," Cale said finally, his voice weak. Ethan nodded, smiling faintly. "Don't thank me yet. We still have a long way to go." They rested for a while. Cale watched the human carefully. Ethan's movements were precise and efficient. He checked the stretcher, adjusted Cale's position, and kept an eye on the horizon. Cale had never seen a human act with such calm focus in a war zone. It surprised him. Humans were smaller and weaker, yet somehow they managed to survive in ways aliens like him could not always understand. After a short rest, Ethan lifted the stretcher again. They moved cautiously toward a ridge that overlooked the valley. From there, they could see the ruins of a small settlement in the distance. Ethan pointed to it. "There's an abandoned outpost over there. We can rest and get supplies. It won't be safe forever, but it's better than staying here. Asa, Nover. Asa, 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 Asa. KL studied the distance. It was far, and the terrain was rough. His body protested at the thought of the journey, but he also understood there was no choice. He nodded, letting Ethan continue guiding him. The journey was slow. Rocks and debris made the stretcher tilt dangerously, and Kale flinched every time his body jostled. Ethan would stop, adjust the position, and mutter under his breath. Almost there. Almost there. At one point, Kale tried to lift his legs slightly. He felt the tiniest movement, a flicker of hope. I can move a little, he said, surprised. Ethan's eyes lit up. See? I told you. We'll get your strength back. Step by step. Kale felt a strange warmth in his chest. This human believed in him. Humans were fragile, yes, but some of them could do things that aliens like him could not. They could hope, care, and act even when the odds were against them. Kyle realized that hope was something he had not felt in a long time. As they approached the outpost, a low rumble echoed through the valley. Kale tensed. What now? He whispered. Trouble, Ethan said simply. Enemy patrols. We need to hide. He maneuvered the stretcher behind a wall of broken metal and stone. Kale peeked over the edge. A group of alien drones patrolled the area. They were larger than the small ones they had seen earlier, with red sensors that glowed ominously. Kale's heart pounded. He had faced these drones in battle. They were fast, smart, and lethal. Ethan assessed the patrol quickly. He pointed to a narrow path between two ruins. We can move while they are distracted. Follow my lead. Stay low. Kale felt his fear mix with something new trust. He did not fully understand why, but he believed that Ethan could get him through this. He tightened his grip on the stretcher straps and prepared for the next move. Step by step, they moved. The drones scanned the area but did not notice them. Kale marveled at the human's skill. He would have panicked or charged forward recklessly. Ethan moved like water, flowing through danger with calm precision. Finally, they reached the outpost. It was old and abandoned, with walls scorched by fire and windows broken. Inside, it smelled of dust and decay. Ethan set the stretcher down carefully. Kale leaned back, exhausted. His body ached, but he was alive. Ethan began searching the outpost. He found a small first aid kit and some rations. We can treat your wounds here and rest for a while, he said. Then we can plan our next move. Kyle watched him silently. He had always believed that strength came from power and skill, but now he was beginning to see that strength could also come from courage and compassion. Ethan was not the strongest soldier, but he was brave in ways that mattered more. He risked his life for someone who was not even human. That was something Kyle had never expected. Ethan cleaned and dressed Kale's wounds carefully. The alien flinched occasionally from pain, but he allowed it. There was trust now. Fragile, but real. They did not speak much. Words were not always necessary. The shared understanding of survival, of courage, of hope, was enough. As evening fell, the sky turned red and purple. Kale felt something shift inside him. He had been abandoned, left to die, but now he was alive. Not because of his strength or skill, but because of a human who chose to help. He thought about the battles he had fought, the warriors who had left him behind. None of that mattered now. What mattered was that he had a chance to live, to fight again, and to see the galaxy in a new way. Ethan sat beside him quietly, keeping watch. Kale looked at him, trying to find the words. Finally, he whispered, "Thank you." Ethan smiled faintly. "We're not done yet, but we'll get through this, Kale. I promise." For the first time in what felt like years, Kale felt hope. The human had shown him that even in the darkest moments, courage and kindness could shine through. And maybe, just maybe, he could return the favor someday. The night grew darker, but inside the abandoned outpost, Kale felt something he had almost forgotten: the quiet certainty that he was not alone. The morning light seeped into the outpost, through cracks in the walls. Kale stirred, feeling the stiffness in his body more than ever. His arms ached from holding himself upright, and his legs felt like dead weight. Yet, there was something different today. A faint pulse of strength moved through him, a small spark that told him he could try. Ethan was already awake, organizing supplies. He looked up when he saw Kale moving slightly. "Good morning," he said with a faint smile. "Feeling better?" Kale tried to shift his body without speaking. "A little," he said finally. His voice was still weak, but he was surprised he could make a sound at all. Ethan nodded. "That's progress," he said. "We'll take it slow. I'll help you move your legs a little today. You ready?" Kale hesitated. Pride warred with need. He hated that he had to rely on a human. Yet, deep down, he knew Ethan was the only one who could help him now. "Do it," he whispered. Ethan carefully positioned Kale on the stretcher so that he could move his legs without causing more pain. Step by step, Ethan guided Kale's limbs, slowly stretching and bending them. Kale gritted his teeth at the sharp sting but kept his focus. After several minutes, he felt a tiny twitch in his left foot. It was small, almost unnoticeable, but it filled him with hope. "You felt that?" Ethan asked, eyes wide. "That's progress, Kale. That's exactly what we need." Kale nodded, a mixture of surprise and determination in his expression. He had been paralyzed, helpless, abandoned, and now, here he was, moving again, because of a human who refused to leave him behind. The realization was strange, almost uncomfortable, but he could not deny the gratitude swelling inside him. They stayed in the outpost for a few more hours, resting and carefully stretching Kale's legs. During that time, Ethan told Kale stories of his past missions, simple tales of human ingenuity and courage. Kale listened, fascinated. These humans were small, fragile, and yet they could survive impossible odds. They could think fast, act fast, and endure pain with a strength that rivaled any warrior Kale had known. By late morning, they decided it was time to leave the outpost. The valley around them was dangerous, and staying in one place too long could attract enemy patrols. Ethan carefully lifted Kale onto the stretcher, and they moved slowly across the rough terrain. The battlefield was quieter than before, but danger was still everywhere. Scorched earth stretched as far as Kale could see, littered with wreckage and corpses. He felt a pang of sadness. His people had fought bravely, yet here they were, defeated and scattered. He thought about the warriors who had left him behind. And yet, for the first time, he did not feel despair. He had a chance to survive now, and perhaps even to fight again. Hours passed as they moved. Kale's body protested with every jolt of the stretcher, but Ethan's careful adjustments helped. At one point, Kale tried to lift his leg again. This time, he felt more control, enough to move it slightly off the stretcher. Ethan noticed immediately. "That's it," Ethan said, eyes bright. Kale felt something he had not felt in a long time: hope. The tiny movement of his leg, something so small, meant that he could fight, that he could survive. His mind began to focus not on fear, but on determination. As they moved, a faint sound of movement reached Kale's ears. He froze. Ethan looked around, scanning the horizon. "Enemy patrol," he whispered. Kale tensed. His body was weak, but he wanted to help. I can try to fight," he said, surprising himself. Ethan shook his head gently. "Not yet. You need to conserve your strength. We'll get you safe first, then we can worry about fighting." They hid behind a ridge, observing a group of enemy drones patrolling below. The drones were larger than the small ones they had seen before, with glowing red sensors and mechanical claws that could shred metal. KL felt a shiver of fear, but it was mixed with something new. Trust. He trusted Ethan to get them through this. Ethan waited for the drones to move past, then led KL along a narrow, rocky path that avoided detection. Step by step, carefully, they made their way to a small canyon that offered cover. Kale could see a faint stream of water below and a grove of trees that could provide some shelter. Finally, they reached a flat area near the water. Ethan set the stretcher down and helped Kale sit up. "Rest here for a while," he said. "We can eat and drink. Then, we'll plan the next move." Kale looked at the water, feeling thirst for the first time in hours. He drank slowly, savoring the coolness. Ethan handed him some food, and Kale ate, surprised at how much strength it gave him. As they rested, Kale began to observe Ethan more closely. He noticed small details, the way the human checked the surroundings constantly, how he adjusted the stretcher to protect Kale, how calm he remained even in the face of danger. Kale realized that this was not just courage, it was intelligence, skill, and compassion all working together. He had never seen anything like it in his life. Ethan looked at Kale and smiled faintly. "You're getting stronger. Maybe soon, you can help me move the stretcher a little." Kale frowned at the idea. He had always been a warrior, strong and independent. The thought of relying on anyone, even partially, was difficult. But he also knew that survival required trust. And for the first time, he trusted a human. They spent the next few hours moving slowly through the canyon. Kale practiced small movements, guided by Ethan. Each twitch of his leg, each tiny lift, was a victory. He felt determination growing in him. He would not be abandoned again. He would survive. He would fight. As evening approached, they reached the edge of the canyon. Before them stretched a small valley, and in the distance, they could see a human outpost. It was abandoned, but it offered safety, shelter, and supplies. Kyle felt a flicker of excitement. For the first time, he felt like he had a destination, a purpose beyond mere survival. But danger was not gone. A faint hum reached their ears. Kale's instincts screamed at him. "Drones," he whispered. Ethan nodded. "Stay low. We'll move carefully." They moved slowly, keeping close to the rocks and shadows. The drones scanned the valley, moving in patterns that made it difficult to predict their path. Kale felt tension rising in his chest. His body was still weak, but he had learned to trust Ethan. And he also realized something else. He wanted to fight alongside this human, not just be protected by him. Ethan led them past the first few drones. Kale noticed how the human calculated every step, every pause, every turn. It was as if Ethan could see the battlefield in his mind. Before moving, Kale was impressed. Humans might be small, but they could be brilliant. They could survive where stronger beings might fail. Finally, they reached a small grove near the outpost. Ethan set the stretcher down, and Kale sat up carefully, testing his legs. He could feel a small amount of strength returning. Not much, but enough to know that he could try. Ethan looked at him. "Good. You're doing better than I thought. Soon, you might not need me to carry you." Kale felt a mixture of pride and gratitude. He had been abandoned and left to die. But now, with this human beside him, he had hope. Hope to survive, hope to fight again, hope to reclaim some part of his honor. They settled near the grove for the night. Ethan kept watch, while Kale closed his eyes, letting his body rest. But his mind was active. He thought about the battles he had fought, the warriors who had left him behind, and the human who had saved him. and he realized something important. Strength was not just in power or skill. It was in courage, in compassion, in the choice to help when no one else would. Cale drifted to sleep, feeling something he had not felt in a long time: hope. He would survive. And when he did, he would remember this human, not just as a soldier, but as someone who had shown him what humans could be.